of Wyoming, Minnesota, February 15th, 2022. Let the record reflect, we do have a quorum. Member Luger, Member Onstad, Member Schilling, Member Yeager, and Mayor Iverson are present. We do ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Member Schilling.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, on the agenda is open forum, is an opportunity for members of the public to address the city council on items that may or may not be on the current agenda. Items requiring council action may be deferred to staff or boards and commissions for research and future council agendas if appropriate. You will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that that you conduct yourself in a professional, courteous manner and refrain from the use of profanity. Failure to abide by this policy may result in the loss of your privilege to speak. And I understand we have somebody who'd like to come up and speak. And we just ask that you state your name and your address.
Excellent. So my name is Dan Sandgren. My address is 26122 Kendall Lane. And I actually just have a request. We're on the agenda for the resolution to talk about the vacation of Kendall Lane. And right now, it would be set up to have the public hearing at the next meeting. But we would request that it be April.
Right now, it's scheduled for March 15th for the public hearing, and then the applicant is requesting that council could do, I'm gonna let you speak, sir.
Yep, so we would just request that it be on April 5th, because we're going to have a
Okay. And let me just ask this question, Mr. Sandgren. Do you have anybody, if we can't switch it, do you have anybody that can come for you?
Potentially, yes, but
Okay.
I feel like if there's any specific questions, we'd be
You'd be the one.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
they just gave it to us.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Linwood, you'll be,
Yeah, well, when the council approves the consent agenda, if you would like to go with Mr. Sandgren's request on that, which we shouldn't have any issue as far as anything, we'll double check our 60-day rule right now, but if council wanted to pull that item and then just ask for a change in that resolution to put that public hearing on April 5th instead of March 15th.
all right. Sounds good. Thank you. We appreciate that. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak? Come on up, and we know who you are, but you still have to state your name.
Okay. Gary Sykes, 5710 East Viking Boulevard. I got two issues. One of them is we've got snowmobiles racing up and down East Viking Boulevard, and they're right on the sidewalks, and they're pushing the snow back on the sidewalks. Last evening, I was talking to Officer Scott Blocker about that, and right at that time, here come one up there, and he took care of it. He was very professional with the individual. Nice to the guy really cut an attitude with Scott to begin with, and Scott was still pretty good with the fellow, and I thought that, that he handled it properly. But what we run into an issue is, just yesterday we shoveled the walks. This morning they're all covered over again with snowmobiles. If somebody gets out there at night and gets toasted by one of those snowmobiles, it's gonna be a mess. And so I guess that what I would say is maybe we should start issuing them fines so that they know that, hey, don't do this because they're gonna hurt somebody someday. The other thing I had was I just wanted to address number 19 in new business, actually. It's the calling improvements measure, and as I looked at it, I thought, you put a great idea. So that's something that probably will be better than traffic feedback sense. And if they put, was here a few, I was thinking probably 4, but anything would be better. But it seems to me like that would be something that would really impact it, as opposed to trying to watch folks try to race. Sometimes I try to race those feedback sets, just to see how fast can I go, So and their maintenance, I suppose, are covered, somewhat maintenance intensive as well. So bump outs, pretty good. The only person I thought of was Public Works about that time. I thought, are they going to enjoy
Look at him smile. Look at that. He's like, yeah.
He's not running the truck. We're that way. I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, we
Thank you.
appreciate that. Chief Bauer, will you be able to check into the snowmobile and report back to us in terms of fines or what we can do, or put up spikes or something? I don't drive a snowmobile, so I have no idea how that works.
That seems like a bad plan.
Right,
However,
it
the rest of it,
probably
yes, I'll look
does,
into
so
it. Yeah.
I don't know, but.
I
if
made a
we-
note here, yes.
Okay,
Thank
that
you.
will be great, we appreciate that. All right, anybody else? Come on up, sure, just state your name and your address, please.
My name is Gary Deegan. I live at 5762 East Viking Boulevard. And when we're talking about the snowmobiles on the sidewalk, I moved up here in '94. In about 1996, I was on my John Deere tractor in my driveway. And I and the snow piles were this high up, of course, along the Viking Boulevard. And I pulled in. This snowmobile went ripping by me at about 40 miles an hour, I don't know. And I didn't have a cab, so I heard him, and he was right behind me. He couldn't even have seen me coming out the street. It was dark out, of course, but that's the thing I'm really concerned about, is when you're looking at this stuff. I haven't seen a snowmobile on the sidewalks until Jerry mentioned it. And I'm going, yeah, I hope this isn't gonna start again. So,
Yeah,
you know, I just wanted to give you my opinion.
we appreciate
What I
that.
experienced, that if he would've hit me, I don't know, who would've been gone?
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. We're definitely will take a look at what's going on over there, so,
Okay, I appreciate
all
it.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. All right, anyone else? No? All right, we will start on number 1 of the agenda, approval of minutes. Consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for February 2nd, 2022. If there are no comments or questions, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by member Luger. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So approved. Number 2, consider approving the minutes of the work session meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for February 9th, 2022. If there are no questions or comments, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve by member Schilling. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Consent agenda, item number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on our agenda. I wish to pull number 4, please. Does anybody else wish to pull anything?
Did we
Nope.
want to pull 5?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah, we gotta pull number
The
5.
Kendall.
Good call. Yeah,
And-
we'll
and-
pull number 5 as well.
And number 8, please.
And number 8. All right, with that, we need a motion to approve 3, 6, 7, 9, and 10. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by member Luger. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Let's start with number 4, a resolution 22-0217, a resolution accepting the donation from Casey's to the Railroad Park Veterans Memorial. The only reason why I'm pulling that is because I would like to thank Casey's for that $1,000 donation to our Veterans Memorial Park. So we're getting closer and closer. I think we're at $214,000 at this time, and we're waiting for some grants. Am I correct on that?
Tonight, the council will review a few, yes.
Awesome, so there we go. So that's why I pulled that. We'll go back and approve all the rest of them at one time. So number 5 was member Onstad's. Go ahead, member Onstad.
We would like to look at changing the date of the public hearing.
Okay, to April 5th.
I just want to quickly note for the record that we are reviewing the application of the 60-day rule, where action must be taken within 60 days. This would, I think from the day we accepted it, be outside of that 60-day.
Okay.
So if necessary, just letting the applicant know, we may just, we'll have the hearing on the date that we have. We just may have a motion to extend our 60-day deadline, which we are permitted to do for the purposes that we need to push this hearing out because you guys aren't going to be in town. So we'll look at that. If we need to do it, we can do it at the next council meeting. It's not something we have to do tonight.
So we can go ahead and approve the way it is now, is
No,
what you're
let's-
saying?
Let's
No.
go ahead and let's set the public hearing for the date that's been requested, not in the motion, but what the applicant has requested. And if we need to extend our deadline, we can do that, but let's make sure we can get the notice going, get everything out, so.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna have to do that one separate, right? Because we have to change it. Okay, number 8, and Member Yeager, that was yours.
Yeah, I just want to confirm, the solicitations permit says 10 to 8 PM, but our agenda says 10 to 7, and I would just like to confirm that that would be, his hours of solicitation will be 10 AM to 7 PM.
If the city council approves it as it is presented on the agenda, it will be 10 to 7 as it has been presented.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you a question on that. Do we need to make this comes up every single time, so do we need to make this ordinance official that it's from 10 to 7 and have that on the application so there's no confusion?
We could change it within the ordinance. If you did want us to do a set standard hours, we could look at that if that was something the council's interested in.
Okay, I don't know. Linda?
I just saw the discrepancy between what was on the permit and what was on the agenda.
Yeah.
And I know that we've always gone to 7 PM.
So would council entertain the change of ordinance if
It works for me.
I would.
you would?
Yep.
Okay, so can we maybe do that?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so let's do approval of on the consent agenda, number 4 and number 8. So who would like to make the first, I'll make the first motion for approving number 4 and number 8 on the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Schilling. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. We'll go to number 5 to consider approving number 5, a resolution 220218, a resolution setting a public hearing on the proposed vacation of 26122 Kendall Lane and having that at a public hearing on April 5th. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
We have a motion by member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. All right, I will move on to reports on the agenda 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Does anybody wish to pull a further communication from that list? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 16, communications. Communication from Chisago County Assessors announcing Board of Equalization date for the City of Wyoming on April 19th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at Wyoming City Hall. Mr. Linwood, do you want to address what that is and why we do that?
Certainly, Mayor, this is just an opportunity for anyone in our community to set an appointment with the county assessor. They can do that at that potential meeting and then set that up. They can discuss their property taxes for 2023 with them at that point, or they can set that appointment. So that's an opportunity for them at both. This will be prior to a city council meeting, just to let make the council aware of that. Staff has already made the appropriate notices and publications that'll be in the Forest Lake Times for this date.
Perfect. All right, any questions?
No.
All right, we'll move on to new business. Number 17, to consider a request to apply for the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant Program. Mr. Sachs?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. So if this grant sounds familiar, you are correct. So in 2020, the City of Wyoming did apply for this grant for the upgrades at Swenson Park. Now that Swenson Park has been completed, staff have been giving attention to Railroad Park, and while exploring funding options, in speaking with some members at the DNR, it was suggested that we apply for this grant again, this time toward Railroad Park. And we were informed that our project at Railroad Park would be eligible for these grant dollars in the category of park redevelopment, which would consist of our Veterans Memorial and History Walk. Applications for this grant are due March 31st of this year. And then I have just some fiscal numbers. So estimated project cost for Railroad Park is now $350,000 to $400,000. There is a range just because that was estimated about 2 years ago, and costs have gone up. So we have that range now. And to date, Mayor, you were correct. It's approximately $214,000 that has been raised so far. So this grant would reimburse up to 50% of the total eligible project costs. So staff would be requesting $200,000 in grant funding, which would reach that goal of $400,000. So staff is asking for council approval to apply for this grant. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this question. Is it a little bit easier applying for this one this time because we have all the information, all the documentation and stuff, so should be easier?
I mean, I would say, you know, because it's a different park, so it is a very rigorous application. However, it's that we have filled it out the first time. We do have that blueprint, but it is still quite a application process, but it should be easier than Swenson Park.
Great, thank you. I'm excited that we're applying for that. It'll be so great to have this done, so. All right, questions from, let's go with member Yeager.
Do have a question of the 213 or 14,000 that was raised. How much was raised by the Buyer Brick program?
Ooh, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I can look into that and get that to you.
Okay.
I think we have approximately about 40 to 50 bricks purchased so far.
At $100 a brick?
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, member Schilling,
No questions.
member Onstad,
No questions.
and member Luker.
No questions. This is really a no-brainer.
All right, that's right.
Apply for the grant.
All right, we need to approve the request to apply for the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant Program. I'm gonna make the first motion on that. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second and a third, so a second by member Luger and third by member Schilling, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so approved. Thank you, Mr.
you.
Sachs. Number 18, to consider a request to apply for the AARP Community Challenge Grant. Mr. Sachs is up for that one as well.
Yep, so another grant. So last year, the city became a member of the AARP Age-Friendly Community. So they just give us a lot of opportunities to make our city more age-friendly. And they offer this Community Challenge Grant, which provides funding for quick action projects to help communities become livable for people of all ages. This year, applications will be accepted for projects in several categories. And Railroad Park would be eligible under the category Creating Vibrant Places that improve open spaces and access to other amenities. Applications are due Tuesday, March 22nd of this year. I included the same fiscal information as the previous grant, I included that they average their grant awards to be about $11,500, and 76% of their grants awarded are usually under $15,000. So it's not as big of a grant, but it is still something. So staff will be requesting a grant in that amount of $15,000. So we're asking City Council to approve staff to apply for this grant for Railroad Park as well.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Thanks for finding those grants too.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll start with member Luger. Questions?
When do so it's due on March 22nd. When do we hear back?
It should be mid-May for this one. We'll find out.
Thank you.
Okay, member Onstad.
Is there anything that the grant needs to be applied towards specifically?
So just in that category, creating vibrant places, I'll have to take a look at the application. But I think if we specify such things as our history walk, Veterans Memorial, we'll specify that. I did look at other examples of previously funded projects through this grant, and I believe it was Bridgeport, Connecticut. They had a very similar history walk that they used all their grant funds for. So.
Member Schilling?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, member Yeager?
No questions.
I think once we get going on this and we break ground and, you know, there'll be a lot more people interested in buying bricks and just seeing the whole project come together and when we have an open house. So thank you. With that, we will need a motion to approve the request to apply for the AARP Community Challenge Grant. I will make the first motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 19, to consider review and discussion of traffic calming and pedestrian crossing on East Viking Boulevard. I like the word calming. So Mr. Erickson, are you starting with this one or?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Mr. Limwood, I'm not sure if you can share your screen. If you can, great. If not, that's okay too. Yep, so I'll just lead in. As you may recall, we've had quite a few neighborhood meetings. We've had feasibility study, public hearings. We've had a lot of discussion on this project, and one of the common themes was, well, there's really two common themes. One is property owners wanted to maintain the parking that is out there today, right? And so we talked a little bit about some options that would narrow that roadway, whether it's both sides of the roadway or one side, and that was not received real well. And so we elected to keep parking on both sides of the roadway. It is somewhat narrower, right? We still meet state aid design requirements, but it is a little bit narrower, both the drive lanes as well as the parking lanes themselves. But we did hear that we wanted to address really speed out there as well. So we've heard a lot of concerns from property owners about speeds. And then we've also heard, that we want to make sure that we improve our pedestrian access and facilities. And so we've looked at potentially adding a couple of pedestrian crossings there as well. And of course, we'd have all the appropriate signing and striping. They would be mid-block crossings and not stop control, but we certainly can accommodate those. And so we'll look to do that. And so what staff has evaluated is really looking at a number of things. One is having some bump outs that would be located strategically. One, to help facilitate those pedestrian crossings and narrow the amount of roadway that they're crossing. And then also provide that traffic calming, really to narrow up that roadway so vehicles don't feel just like it's a wide open roadway where they can just tend to feel comfortable and exceed the speed limits. And so we've had a number of conversations, and Mr. Sykes has adequately represented Mr. Almjud's concerns, right? I mean, that's just a common thing with all public works, right? Is it's going to be a little bit more challenging to accommodate some of the plowing activities. Mr. Bauer was, certainly in favor. He's well aware that certain designs within roadways can have a positive impact on reducing speeds. And so we've had a really good staff discussion on that. Mr. Linwood had coordinated that meeting, and we really had some good discussion that evolved around that. And so we know that we have a pedestrian crossing. I'll start with the pedestrian crossings, but we know that we have one near Highway 61. And then we're looking at Frontier is the development there that has a sidewalk facility within it that was recently constructed by Mr. Moxness. And so that has pedestrian facilities in it that runs north-south, and so that's a logical location. And the other one was really at Forley. And so those were the locations that we really plan to accommodate the pedestrian crossings. And so with that, that's a logical location also to consider these bump outs. And so we've looked at that, and these bump outs could really be considered on one side of the roadway or both sides of the roadway. We could consume the parking lane, whether it's on the north side or the south side, or both, and narrow up the roadway to accommodate that. One thing I'll ask you just to consider is you can imagine yourself heading east on East Viking. There's a number of roadways that tee into the roadway where you could take a right turn. And oftentimes that parking lane is sometimes used as a turn lane. And so if we provided a bump out there, cars would stop, or slow traffic down, which might be a positive, right? That might add to the calming effect. But really they would need to come to a stop in the turn lane, or in the through lane, rather than in the parking lane that exists there now to get off of the side of the roadway and turn. And so that's just one consideration if we were to have them on the east side. Of course, it's true also heading west, but most property owners or most drivers that are going west are not looking to turn back in to the development areas. And so that's one consideration. If we want to consider these is one question. Do we want to have these bump outs to accommodate a shorter area for pedestrians to cross, as well as really do we want to, one other consideration I know that had come up is biking. And so I think we've talked about only having sidewalks and not really accommodating for bicyclists. And the comment was made that, well, they can use the parking lane. There's not always vehicles in that parking lane, and people utilize that to bicycle and stay out of the lane of traffic. These bump outs would make that a little bit more difficult. And so certainly the bump outs on the north side, I think, work really well. We could certainly accommodate bump outs on the north side and still accommodate the through lane for potential bicyclists on the south side, as well as kind of maintaining that room to get over and out of the drive lane to take a right. But we may just want to consider having bump outs on both sides of the roadway. So what I'm getting at is, would you like staff to work and develop some ideas? And we just didn't want to spend a lot of effort if there wasn't interest on that. We could certainly engage the public a little bit. I think there's some that are already here and favoring that. There is some driveways that might be impacted within these bump out areas because they happen to be in locations that there's driveways as well, right? And so there might be a taper where the driveway comes in a taper area, which is certainly feasible. We can accommodate that, but it does add to the challenge of those a little bit as well. But just wanted to get some initial feedback from council if that's something that they wanted staff to pursue, and if it is, we can come back with some ideas.
Okay, what's the additional cost? Is there, how much,
There's really limited extra cost with these bump outs. You know, it's really very little curb and gutter. I mean, it's thousands, not tens of thousands, you know, for each one. It's pretty minimal considering the overall project cost.
Okay, that was all my questions. We'll start with Member Schilling.
Well, if the bikes are down in the cities, they just get in the middle of the lane.
That's
sit
very
at the
true.
stoplight, so they're allowed to be on the traffic lane, correct? I mean, so I don't really worry about the bikes too much, but I do like the bump outs. I think it slows traffic down, so that's my thought on it.
Okay, Member Yeager?
With these bump outs, would it be, you mentioned people making a right, using the bike lane, the parking lane to make a right turn. Would they be constructed such that you couldn't, a car couldn't drive over that bump out? Like, for example, if you're on the roundabout, and you take it a little too close, you're a car with a bigger, higher clearance than what I got would go up on the side there.
Right, so it would be a curbed area. We would likely have those signs so that people that, you know, were snow plowing would be able to see where they're at, or people that are driving and, you know, in maybe snow conditions, that they're able to clearly identify and delineate where those are. So they would be signed to identify where those are. So people wouldn't be driving over those. They may be concrete, they may be just grass areas that are widened and accommodate a little bit more green area in those. And so we can certainly work through some of those designs, but they would be designed ultimately not to drive over. We would, of course, accommodate right turns and have the appropriate radiuses on those to make sure that the turning movements were still
Yeah, but
able
you
to
know,
be
you kind of
accomplished.
never know. Somebody's coming down, they're making the right, they're not used to a bump out, and they bump up. Would these how would the narrowing of the lanes affect, let's say, the big trucks and semis that come down, besides supposedly slowing them down?
Yeah, so we would absolutely maintain the integrity of the lanes, and then there's also a 2-foot curb reaction that's required with MnDOT design guidelines. So it would actually still maintain adequate travel lanes for semis and truck traffic, but it would, you know, hopefully slow them down.
Would parking, how much of the parking would be adversely affected?
You know, it's pretty minimal. We'll look into those design requirements. You know, oftentimes there's taper requirements. You can see the examples here are pretty short tapers where they're able to be accomplished in a short period of time to develop that extra width or minimize that extra width.
Okay.
And so we would look at that. They're certainly not going to be displacing parking for hundreds of feet each one, right? I mean, there's the potential to have real gradual tapers to help avoid maybe the abrupt turn that abrupt nature of what you see there, to help, you know, minimize, you know, people that might be startled by that and not see that. But I think we'd like to develop those in a shorter period of time just to lessen the impact of parking and driveway impacts.
And there would be, what do you call them, little depressions in the bump outs, so that if we were riding the bike and, you know, came up to the bump out, instead of going into the middle of the road, and if you didn't want to, you could just scoot up on the sidewalk and then scoot back out again once you cleared the bump out?
Yeah, so good question. You know, we've talked a little bit, and I think the top figure really is probably most closely represents what we would like to do there. And our bump out would be approximately 6 feet, and so it wouldn't be something that we'd just be able to, you know, have a path or a sidewalk extend straight through the bump out. But I think what you're referring to is to bump out and get off and onto perhaps the off to the sidewalk.
Let's say, for example, I'm riding to the post office. I encounter the bump out. There are cars coming both ways. I don't really want to be in the middle of the street and get picked off. So what I might do is scoot up to the sidewalk, and then once I cleared the bump out and everything widens up again, scoot off the sidewalk so I don't hit anybody walking on the sidewalk.
There are design guidelines for things like that, so we could certainly accommodate.
That's all I had.
All right, Member Onsted?
I've been in favor of the bump outs since day one, I believe, in this project. I like how it delineates the parking from the street itself and looks like parking. There's no question that that's what that's for. And it prevents the city from looking like, or the road from looking like it's a 4-lane drag race. It makes it look like a city street that's community orientated. So no question, just a comment.
Okay, and I'm hearing favorability for both sides, is what I'm hearing, is that correct?
Well,
We-
let's ask Member Luger what she thinks.
She's got so many thoughts. I love this idea. I am interested in seeing a couple of different scenarios. In a perfect world, I would love to see kind of the need to have that calming effect on traffic, but as well, in addition to accommodating bicyclists, just because I think whereas in the cities, we are used to having to, share the road. I don't know that in our community, it's such a shared experience. So I'd like to see something where the needs of both are met.
Okay, and I have a question for Superintendent Umjeld. What plow truck would we be able to use on that street? We're fine with any of them?
Yeah, that on the top picture where you got the markers,
Yeah,
we just make sure them are up so that, when they can't see the curb, they know where to turn.
okay.
They'll get used to it.
They'll get used to it, okay. They do a good job, so,
Yeah.
okay,
And
perfect.
After a few curb repairs.
No, they're much
That'd be-
better. I suggest you ride with them once.
Yeah, no,
You'll-
they're very
You'll see they
good.
won't need that, so. All right, Mr. Erickson.
Yeah, and then, on the very east end, there's a lot of area that really doesn't require parking in our staff's opinion. It is not an area where it's residential development. There's the SRC, there's areas there that there's areas where a lot of lots maybe back up to it, but don't necessarily have access to it. So we're proposing to have a narrower section roadway there, urban section roadway, but again, a little bit narrower, and then develop that parking once we get to where there's homes. And so we're looking to probably do that as well, and we can kind of identify those areas as well. But we think that's probably a good idea to help keep that traffic maybe a little bit slower in that stretch as well.
And we do know that in that stretch too, could be further development at some point in time in Wyoming, so it's good to plan for that. So I think we're all, you have a
So I just had a question. So in what you just said, and when you look at the GIS, I mean, from Frontier East, in my opinion, everything backs up to it that's developed. SRC's on the north side, the townhomes. I mean, anything beyond there, I don't really see the need for on-street parking from Frontier
Right,
on.
correct.
If that's what you're talking about, I'm assuming. Thank you.
All right, I'm hearing we're all in agreement that we would like WSB to go ahead and provide more information? Yes? Okay. So, we need to approve the review, we need to approve WSB. Do we need approval of that? Would you like official approval?
I don't think we need a motion. I think.
We don't need a motion on it?
Consensus is okay on it.
Perfect,
I don't think a motion
good.
is necessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
That sounds great, thank you. And number 20, the last on our agenda, is to consider the Wyoming City Council entering a closed session under Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to discuss labor negotiation strategies for a contract with the bargaining unit of IUOE Local 49ers. Mr. Linwood or Mr. Lunan?
From this, Mayor, we'll take a recess and we'll head to closed session. Mr. Lunan, I don't know, just a 5-minute recess.
Great, yeah, 5-minute recess, and then we can come back. We will come back in open session, and then we will go to close, but allow people to
Yep.
certainly can stick around, but we're gonna close.